Awesome, I can do that too. All right,
Ooh,
great.
all right, we're good.
Okay. Welcome everyone. This is a special meeting of the City of Gloucester Licensing Board. Today is Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. It is 7:04 p.m. We started a few minutes late due to technical difficulties. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of not more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you're calling in by phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there's a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. The information for this meeting is published on the City of Gloucester website, and a recording of this meeting will be available usually within 24 hours on that same website. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Melissa Prince. I am the chair of this licensing board, and joining me is
John Lemerand.
Thank you, John. Can you just call attendance, Allison?
Miss Prince.
Here.
Mr. Lammer.
Here.
So we do have a quorum of this board, so we can start the meeting. We do have public comment listed on our agenda tonight. However, I don't see any attendees here. I'm going to give it 10 seconds to see if someone joins us. Seeing none, there's no public comments. So this is a one-item agenda. The board will discuss BYOB, bring your own booze or bottle, and make recommendations as to how to regulate BYOB within the Gloucester community. Joining us is City Solicitor Chip Payson, our Mayor Safati Romeo Taken, and we have Deputy Chief Joe Fitzgerald from the Gloucester Police Department joining us tonight as well. Thank you very much for joining the conversation. How is everyone tonight?
It's a beautiful day.
Good, thank you.
Very good. And thank you for taking the time. I know this is a special meeting. I know people have other commitments this week, so we'll try to get our work done as soon as possible. So as you know, the BYOB discussion started, it was back in August 26, 2019, actually, when this board had a special workshop, and we brought this topic up and from a high level discussed concerns and the status of the city with BYOB and how the fact that we do not have any regulation in Gloucester, which basically means it is allowed without regulation. So as a group collectively, we shared our concerns about this at our last meeting from a public safety perspective mostly. And so we are here tonight to move forward on this issue and discuss regulating BYOB in Gloucester. So I think I want to start off a little bit. I'm going to start with, first let me just ask the mayor. Mayor, do you want to say anything before we start?
Hold on. Actually, no, I'm just here to observe it because I want to hear the input. I was hoping that would be public input in the community because I know how I personally feel. It's kind of hard with liability and what's going on and all these new things that they want to do. We can't control what's out in the ocean, but hopefully we'll be able to at least know what's happening. And like I said, a lot of people were saying that when they do entertainment licenses, they have to have, a permit. And when they do a function, and if there's no alcohol served, they have to have a safe serve, they have to have this, and they have all these things. So it's not like, okay, you go into my house and you're bringing a bottle of wine and we're going to stop you. That's not the intention here. So when people have to understand, what are you talking about? Because you hear, bring your own booze, BYOB. You have everyone going like, well, I have a right. Yes. Breathe, listen. And that's what I'm here. And Deputy Chief, I thought you were, I didn't know that. I thought you were just the assistant chief. You are, assistant chief. I thought deputy was fired. Did you leave?
What's that? Did I leave?
Yeah, well, because it says deputy
fired.
chief. I thought deputy chief, is this the fire department or is this Joe Fitzgerald?
It's Joe Fitzgerald.
Well, I thought you were assistant chief.
Well, I think I can answer it either term.
Oh, yeah, because I'm going like, deputy, is that for police or fire? I didn't know we changed. I'm going like, he left us? No. Oh, no, that's right. That's only my CAO. Don't worry. Thank you.
So on those lines, Savate, just to bring you up to speed, and Chip and Chief Fitzgerald as well. Last week we did have a public hearing. It was advertised in the newspaper. We met the 10-day requirements for advertising and gave the public the opportunity to come forward to speak to this issue before we started discussing it. So just to give you a quick brief update, we did advertise it last week and no one specifically came to our meeting to speak to this issue. However, because we were renewing licenses at the same time, Fred from the Rum Line, Rick and Kirk from the Drift, and Dean Lavoy from, I think, Innisquam Yacht Club, if I remember correctly, all spoke. And they spoke in favor of having BYOB, but also regulating BYOB. No one was against it. No one stated anything out of the ordinary other than just concerns about the fact that we don't have a regulation. And it's only fair that if we're holding our liquor license establishments to a safety level, we should be doing the same with other restaurants that want to do BYOB. So that was basically what was said, but it was great to hear our businesses that do have alcohol licenses supporting businesses that don't, because as you know, we have a struggle in this community to have enough liquor licenses for all our establishments, and there's a desire for more than we have. So that was good to hear on that front. So it was just 3 people that spoke at our public hearing, and we closed the hearing, and John and I decided at the end of the meeting, after talking with Sergeant Connors as well, that our direction was that we were going to go with allowing BYOB, because as you know, we could try to prohibit it, not do anything and just allow it to stay the same, or we could allow with a regulation. And John and I discussed between board members that we wanted to move forward with some sort of regulation. So that's why you're invited here tonight to help us make that type of decision or recommendation. So does anyone have any questions before we start?
I have one question.
Yes.
So is this, when you say BYOB, is it beer and wine only, or is it everything?
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay, so that hasn't been determined yet.
Nope, we haven't
Okay.
determined anything other than the fact that John and I, as licensing board members, would like to move forward with some sort of BYOB regulation.
Okay,
And we have looked at other communities. There's no need to really invent the wheel in this situation. We have some great samples out there from other communities that are doing it. So John and I reviewed those. Chip Payson sent us some, and there was others out on the website. So we've reviewed things, so we kind of have an idea of what direction we want to go in, I believe. But we want to do that tonight with your input and Chip's input for the legal part, and make
Okay.
those decisions tonight. And of course, we'd want you to weigh in on your concerns about any decisions we make or decisions we aren't deciding, things we should be thinking of from a public safety standpoint that we may not be thinking of.
okay, thank you.
So Chip, I think I want to start with you just to tell us exactly what we're doing. Because I mean, I've seen different communities do different things. So what authority does the licensing board have? And by having this conversation tonight, what are we actually doing? I mean, we're not drafting an ordinance, to my understanding. Is this like a recommendation to the mayor? Is it a recommendation to the city council? Just to give us some direction on what will actually be the outcome of this conversation tonight.
So I think, Madam Chair, that the licensing board actually has the ability to create certain regulations. However, what I envision, and I think you and I had some conversations about, is that I envision that the licensing board, which has the authority and the expertise here, would discuss some of the parameters, like Assistant Chief Fitzgerald stated, about, you know, what kind of alcohol, where this alcohol should be, who should be allowed to do this, how long the licenses are, how much the licenses are, all those finer points. And then, you know, as you mentioned, there are a number of municipalities who have BYOB ordinances, and I would suggest that the procedure be that the licensing board discuss this, put some parameters and framework around it, forward it to the mayor for inclusion as a recommendation for action in the mayor's report to the council to put this into ordinance like other municipalities have. That's not to say that, you know, regulations may not carry similar weight, but I just think with this one and the way some of the other municipalities have gone, that it's best to put it into the ordinance. So I had sent you, some questions to consider, but it sounds like, some of the things that the board wants to think about is, do you want to allow BYOB in vehicles? Do you want to limit the number of BYOB licenses within a 12-month period? What's the cost for a license? Is it $50? Is it $500? Do you want to limit the amount of alcohol each patron could bring with them to the establishment? What role do you want the police department to play in signing off on these applications, perhaps before the board approves them, which I would think, you may want to strongly consider. Any other specifics, unique things to Gloucester that you may want to think about in how to put this together. And then I would also suggest that there be some kind of revocation language in there for violations. I view this somewhat as a putting some more meat on the bones through a discussion. And then what I can do is, craft something more specific to what the sense of the board is, and then circulate it to the board. And then you guys can review it, make amendments in a meeting, vote it, and then send it over to the mayor's office, and it can go right into the mayor's report. That would just be my advice.
Thank you. And one question, what is the timeline for an ordinance to get developed? In other words, if this process goes through and say at our next meeting, which wouldn't be until May 18th.
18th, yeah.
After May 18th, if we put this forward, what is the time period afterwards for an ordinance to get
Well,
developed?
so it goes in the mayor's report the following week. That's roughly 1 week. It goes to the consent agenda to committee. There's 2 weeks. Committee action goes back to the council 3 weeks. And then you've got at the earliest, then you've got 30 days for it to go into effect. So, what the board might want to consider is a belt and suspenders kind of thing, where the board can adopt this as a regulation, and then we can put it through the mayor's report just to kind of see, if we can get earlier coverage. But the board also might want to consider maybe holding a special meeting the first or second week in May to get this moving as quickly as possible. So
The reason why I ask is reviewing, doing some research, either through internet or newspapers or whatever. I noticed when Peabody took on this issue, they started off, by it looks at their first steps was the first thing they did as a licensing board. And this is why I asked you what our authority is they suspended the ability to have BYOB until an ordinance was developed. So that's why I was asking on the timeline. I mean, is there a public safety concern right now where we should be taking those kind of steps before we begin? Or are we okay taking the risk, I guess I would say,
Well,
for a couple months to go by until an
Well,
ordinance
I
is
don't-
developed?
yeah, I mean, I can defer to the assistant chief, and then if the mayor wants to chime in, she obviously can. But as you know, there is an application for an enterprise that would involve BYOB. And I think that given the fact that no comment is implicit approval, it might be prudent for the board to consider taking a vote to suspend any BYOB pending the issuance of regulations and ordinances as a safety precaution.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions for Chip. John, do you have anything before we start?
No, he captured some of the questions I had, so that's great. So thank you, Chip. Allison, there is an attendee.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
It's just by telephone. It's just someone probably calling in and listening. We're okay. Okay, so Chip, I think tonight, and Deputy Chief, I think what we'll do is John and I are gonna have a conversation with you both. We're gonna put forward someone talking?
I'm sorry,
Okay, no, I just want to make sure it
it's
wasn't.
me. My phone keeps going off. I just shut it off.
Okay, we're gonna take some steps to develop, I think, what we see as being recommendations But before we leave this meeting tonight, John, if it's okay with you, I would like to address the issue we just discussed about potentially suspending any BYOB until a regulation is in place. I think we definitely need to have that conversation tonight.
Yep.
You can put that to vote if you're ready to vote. I know I am. So I just don't want to leave this meeting without having that conversation as well.
Okay. No worries.
Okay. So Chief Fitzgerald, do you want to say anything to us before we begin our discussion about any concerns specifically from the police department from a high level until we get deep into the weeds of this? Is there anything you'd like to tell us?
Oh, I'm
Or,
curious, I'm curious to learn in the research that's been done in other towns, if it's BYOB, it includes liquor. And then going forward, how do you kind of regulate that? One person walks into an establishment with a bottle of tequila. How do you kind of keep him under wraps to make sure he doesn't overindulge?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to hearing about how other towns have approached this.
Okay.
Well,
I
I could speak to Boston. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, that's okay.
I sent a draft just on model regulations based on what Boston had done. And Boston specifically says wine and malt beverages only. Their patrons are prohibited from bringing distilled spirits and or liqueurs, cordials into the licensed premises. And then they limit what size malt beverage and what size wine containers they can bring in, and then they conclude with that the patron's prohibited from re-entering with additional alcohol. So there are ways to limit that. I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's okay. And that's the kind of meeting this is going to be. So I'm going to throw away the formalities because I know we all have a lot to say and want to be timely tonight as well. But Chief, to your response, to respond to you, I can tell you that John and I have looked at several. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen any that allow liquor. I've only seen one that allows cordials and most of beer and wine and state malt. And to be honest with you, some of these are so detailed, which I know we don't like a lot of words, but in situations like this, it might be a need for a lot of words. But there's actually definitions in some of the samples that we looked at that I know I like, which specifically says what a wine is and what a malt is, because as you know, in this ever-changing world with seltzers and things like that, new products are coming on the market. So I think it would be helpful that to actually give a definition of what kind of alcohol we would allow, so that there's no question.
Right. I would think that, a similar regulation here would be along those same lines, limiting it to beer and wine and maybe incorporating some of those definitions with it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna hear a lot coming from us real quick.
Okay.
I think we're pretty prepared.
Okay, I'll be
John and I
quiet
don't
then.
know where we stand with each other, and there's only two of us, but I think collectively we want to go in the right direction. So I don't think this conversation is going to be difficult. It's just a matter of covering all the concerns before we give it to Chip. And he's
Sure.
probably going to hate me by the end of this meeting because it's probably a lot.
Oh,
That's okay.
more information, the better.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. So John, to start, I think we should make a decision on just from who's going to be allowed to do BYOB. Like many of the samples that we looked at, and a good fit for this community, I think, is limiting to establishments that have a common victular license already. In other words, they're serving food. They've had food inspections. There's other departments of the city involved with the businesses, and I see this as more of enhancing a dining experience when you're actually having a meal, as opposed to just being able to walk into any establishment with a bottle or booze or whatever the B stands for, because different definitions.
We
So
can
I'm
talk
curious
about
to hear your thoughts on that.
You can talk. I think bring your own bottle is better than booze, because booze insinuates, tequila. I think harder liquid and all that. So I think bring your own bottle sounds much better. It's clearer.
Okay.
And I do think that we have these small mom and pop kind of pizza places, and some restaurants that do have seating in there, but, it could enhance the experience for them. So I'm certainly support the common victular license piece, that they have to be able to serve food and not snack food, chips and popcorn and all that. I think there needs to be something specific about, and there were, some clarity on some of these other ones we looked at on how specific they have to be.
Right. I think one thing we learned during COVID is when people heard that you couldn't have alcohol without food, people got their pretzels out and their popcorn and things like that, which I don't know was necessarily anticipated when the regulations first came out, but I know I'm pretty clear on us helping our businesses as much as we can, especially during this time period, but it also being a dining experience, not just a snacking experience. So
just to question that. So you're talking about serve the establishment in which the patron
serve meals.
visits serves the food, not the patron bringing the food with them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would be so specific to say meals, because
Got it.
I think by saying meals, we're eliminating pretzels and popcorn.
Yeah, and probably prepared
Okay.
on site.
Right. Which
All
is
right.
what the common vic license would be,
Right.
is required for. So I think by saying this, we're saying that you have to have a common vic license to obtain a BYOB license,
Yes, I would agree.
which means there's food involved, which is the reason for a common vic license.
Yep.
Okay. I think we should also go so far in this ordinance to say that BYOB is not allowed in establishments that already have a liquor license.
Correct. Yes.
That eliminates people bringing in nips and things like that that get sneaked in during in the establishments that have alcohol. Sometimes people bring nips-ins and things like that. So I think by regulating this, it's very clear that you can't bring your own booze into an establishment that already sells booze.
Would agree.
We in agreement with that?
Yep.
Okay, and I think we should probably start off by saying also that alcohol cannot be provided from the establishment. I mean, sometimes you can assume things, but I think it's better that we say that.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Okay,
I think we have to be as specific as possible.
I do
think
too.
everything, there should be no gray. It should be really black and white.
Exactly. Okay, so John, what do you see as the next step as like how you want to move forward?
Maybe we can capture that. So on the Greenfield one I was looking at, eligibility
Yeah,
states in there. I kind of like their wording on that one, because it also talks about hours of hours it's provided, which I think we should also state in there. It could be provided between 4 p.m. and 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. or even 11 a.m. I guess there's some, other establishments are early for lunch type thing, but I do think we should be specific to what's allowed and not allowed.
That's helpful. If you have examples in front of you,
yeah.
if you tell me the municipality and the
Mhm.
section that you like this section, I'm taking notes, then
Yep.
that refers me back and I can start to put something together. So that's very helpful, John.
Yeah, so for the Greenfield one, Chip, it was page 2, and there's number 5, eligibility.
Okay.
Which
Thank
says, if it is only available for establishments that provide meals and have been issued a common victual license, shall only be issued in the name of the manager and shall not be transferred without prior approval of the licensing authority. Only applies to malt beverages and wine. Patrons are not permitted to bring in hard liquor. And alcohol beverages may only be consumed between the hours of 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. And I think that's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
By patrons seated at a table with a meal being served by the licensee. Buffet arrangements are acceptable, provided that the food and beverage are consumed only at the dining table. So I think that's attractive language. And Chip, on the same document above it where it says applicability, that's the language we've already discussed too. So it looks like right now we're pretty much going with how Greenfield has their approach to their BYOB license.
Other
Okay.
than they call it bring your own brew, which, you know, I guess too,
Yeah,
I think it does have to be bottled.
yeah,
Right.
bottle, exactly. So while we're on the topic, let's talk about hours of consumption. So I've seen some places that just do it from 5 to 11. This one says 11 to 11. So is this something we would want establishments to be able to do during the day for lunchtime and into the dinner time? John, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I'm looking at Amherst, page 3 at the bottom. They do it 12 to 11. So I'm trying to think, you know, what type of establishment they want a BYOB. So there could be some lunch service that they would want to on a Sunday, you know, Saturday or Sunday on the weekend, weekday. I would be fine with 11 or 12, you know, 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. But I think 11 p.m. at night is kind of further into it, so it's a little late.
Yeah, so on that note, I just want to say, you know, in Gloucester, you can purchase alcohol after 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Saturday, with the exception of Sunday, which is 10 a.m.
Yep.
So, but I see this as I would like establishments to be able to have this opportunity during lunch, you know, say I want to take my dad out for his birthday to the Causeway or somewhere that doesn't have a license. And it's 11:30, 12 o'clock, we're going early because we don't want to wait in the long line outside, you know. I personally don't see a problem having the service offered during the day. I'm more worried about going later into the night than I am starting earlier in the day.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page there.
So I would say
Let's-
a 11 o'clock start, I think is very fair.
And a 9 p.m. stop.
Yeah, 9 reservations at 7, 9, 9. I would go, yeah, 9, 9:30, 9:30 maybe.
Yeah, I could be fine with 9:30.
And just see if that's an issue. I mean, I don't see people that are just going out to dinner to enjoy a small amount of alcohol that they're bringing, staying longer than that. And I don't know. how
11
many-
a.m. to 9:30 then?
What is that? 11 to 9:30?
11
Yeah.
a.m. to 9:30? Okay.
Yep. Deputy Chief, do you see an issue with that being the case?
I don't see an issue. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, great. Okay,
Madam Chair, can I
yes,
just confirm that that's Monday through Sunday?
yes.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you.
Sure.
And I think we should back up a little bit too as to, and I'm looking at the Weston document when I say this, it talks about all common victual licenses that choose to allow patrons to bring their alcohol beverages on premises shall be subject to the following recommendations. They permit beer and wine products only, no hard alcohol. If a patron brings any hard alcohol product, the manager must refuse service until the hard alcohol is removed from the premises. That's pretty good language to have in there because it directs the manager what to do so they know what to do.
Right.
Licensee shall not permit consumption of alcohol beverages by a person who is intoxicated. Licensee shall not permit consumption of alcohol beverages by persons who are under 21 years of age. Any licensee who reasonably relies on the following forms of identification for proof of age, not thereby subject its license to modification, suspension, revocation, or cancellation. So in other words, it lists the 5 valid identifications that are allowed by Massachusetts, which is the license, the liquor ID, anything from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, a passport, or a government issued ID. If the establishment, if we put this in the ordinance, if it's recommended, and the establishment goes by one of these types of identification, I think that should relieve them from any liability. And that way it tells them they know they have to know what the 5 forms that are accepted as IDs are.
Yeah, I like that too.
And possible permit revocation, right?
Yeah, we'll get into enforcement after near the end too.
Okay.
There's a couple opportunities to talk about, a couple things to talk about, but we'll save that for the end. I think will be
All right.
good. I also like On the same line, number C, the manager, any alternate manager, and all servers must participate in a safe service of alcohol training program designed for restaurants to train persons in methods of operation and detection. And it's actually a long paragraph.
Yeah,
And I think, Chip, if you look at that, it's page 1 and 2 of the Weston. I think that's great language as far as recommendations on training and what's required. There, I like this thing too, is not something we would have thought of. Licensees shall not permit their managers or employees to consume alcoholic beverages while on duty. I think that's important. I mean, if they're allowing alcohol in the restaurant, we would hope that they would not let their employees be drinking during their service. John, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Licensees shall not permit drinking games. I think that's a good thing that we wouldn't think of that would happen. And another requirement, which I would definitely want, is the posting of the penalties set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapter 90, Section 24I. You know, the signs that are up on the walls that warn the public of the consequences of drinking and driving that all establishments must have. I think if BYOB is going to be accepted in the establishment, that they should put the public on notice as well.
And on the Amherst one, page 4, it talks about how the employees should handle or what they can't handle
Yep.
in regards to alcohol.
Yeah, that's actually in almost all of them too.
Yeah.
Um,
The Amherst one goes into a little bit more detail, I thought, than some of the other ones. So
okay, so where are you on Amherst?
page 4, number 6, it's starts off
Yes.
with general
Yep.
regulations.
Yeah, so what we've learned, we have to consider a cork and fee and what that means. And it appears, just in our research alone, that it's in the best interest of our establishments not to handle alcoholic beverages. And at least 3 of these samples in front of us say something similar to: the establishment or its employees may not handle or serve alcoholic beverages. This includes storing, refrigerating, and pouring alcoholic beverages. This would be considered a delivery of alcohol and is illegal without a Section 12 license. This does not preclude the establishment from disposing of alcohol beverages left on the premises by the patron, or from providing glasses, bottle chillers, bottle openers, or the like free of charge, unless we want to say they can charge. But I think that language is very important, because it puts the establishment on notice that they don't touch alcohol. Like, a lot of people don't know that just bringing alcohol from one place to another that is not a home is a transfer of alcohol, and you actually need a license for that. So this language is pretty specific, putting our establishments on notice that they can't handle alcohol because they are not licensed to handle alcohol.
Madam Chair, would that be a good time to introduce what requirements for liability would be?
You mean the insurance?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see any language, or, I mean,
I didn't
ahead.
see any specific to, what the requirement is for at least dollar value, or at least maximum insurance that they should have on any of these.
I believe Boston had some, because in my draft,
Yeah,
which I modeled off Boston, they had liability requirements
Yeah.
of 250,000, 500,000.
Yep.
So maybe that's something to consider.
yeah. So Chip, I like your all the language you have under the liability requirements for the 250, 500, and then the proof of the liability insurance. I like your language there.
Okay.
But then I'd like to end it with, if you look, and John, tell me what you think on the Weston one. It's on page 3. It puts the establishment on notice of what their liability is. So Chip, that's Weston, page
Page
2, letters O. And it talks about how establishments that allow this BYOB will take on that liability. It specifically
It's
tells,
page 2, letter O.
it's page 3, letter O of
Okay.
Weston.
All right, thank you.
It's kind of wordy. I don't know that we need all that language, but it basically just says that by allowing patrons with BYOB, the licensee is potentially exposed to significant liability for injuries and damages to the person served. You know, it just puts them on notice that they, not only do you need liability insurance, but you're liable if something happens, you know. It's just a little
Okay.
bit more of enforcement that I think would help the police in enforcement. John, do you see any, what would you see as your next steps?
Maybe the limitation on quantity of alcohol.
Yep. And I think Chip gave us a recommendation for that, and it
Yeah.
seemed pretty similar to the other ones.
Yep. Nope, I would be fine with what was provided by Chip.
And
Under
that,
permitted types and sizes of alcohol, or I'd use the size section since we've already dealt with the types. So I think
Yeah.
that would be C and
Yep.
D.
Yep.
malt beverages no larger than 64 ounces per person, that's a lot. And patrons can only bring in wine no larger than 750 milliliters per person.
Yep.
And also saying that the patrons are prohibited from re-entering the premises with additional alcohol. In other words, they can't run out to the package store and get more.
Got it.
But John, let's go back to talking about, I know a lot of them say corkage fee, some have it, some don't. And I know that language is kind of concerning with the not being able to serve. But do you think there should be any type of fee that the establishment can charge? Most of these say that licensees are not prohibited from serving glassware or a bottle opener. But I'm kind of, when I did my research on the corkage issue, it talked about more about charging a fee when the restaurant already serves wine. And they charge that fee because you're competing with their product. And I don't see that happening with BYOB in Gloucester because it's not going to be, the products they bring in aren't competing with any other wine or beer in the establishment because they're not in establishments that serve beer or wine. But tell me your thoughts on that. That's one of your expertise being in your background. So tell me what you think of.
I mean, we're able to, restaurants are able to, with their liquor license, recap some of that cost of the license through, serving the alcohol. Cork fee would be, at least the establishment will be able to get some funds back. But the liability, I think, if you charge that fee, I'm on the fence. You become liable for it at that point in time. I mean, I do think they should provide, glassware and what else is it? Yeah, glass. Well, they have what was it? Hammers has any service fee, glass fee, table fee, corkage fee, or other fee, or charge associated with some alcohol consumption would be considered indirect sale, and it's illegal within Section 12. So I think I'd like to understand Section 12 a little bit more regarding that.
So Section 12 is the license, Section 12
Yeah.
license.
Yeah. Just I don't.
Go ahead.
So it's weird because other places will charge that cork fee in their reg. And I'm trying to find which one I was looking at. It said
So the
that.
ones I found, I mean, I've seen that, but I mean, this is where you and I might disagree, and I don't know how that works with two people. So we can talk this out.
No, I mean, I
see the corkage fee being an issue. And to be honest with you, if we're concerned about recapturing money, I think that's a conversation we can have when we talk about what the fee actually costs to get a permit.
Well, that was gonna be my next question, that, what is that fee going to be? So
Yeah,
if it's something low, Amherst is $20. According to their, I've got like 4 documents in front of me, I'm trying to find which one. it is. Then there's others. Springfield, I think, was 25 or something, but yeah, so I think it depends. I mean, full alcohol licenses are not cheap in the city. They're it's, if it's something that's small, like a $200 fee a year, I would be, that's simple enough. If it's $1,500 a year, I think it's unfair,
right.
for the BYOB establishments to have that type of fee. So, maybe we could talk through what you feel on what that fee would be, and that's reasonable for establishments.
Okay, let's put that, put a tack in it and we'll get back to that then. I think it's important that we say, which I think is the law, it's a law if you're a server, but anyone who is waiting on a table with BYOB must be 18 years old.
No, I agree.
I don't know that was in,
And
anything.
there's a couple of them, and I do think that we should talk about ServSafe, the requirements regarding training for BYOB establishments.
yeah, that we discussed, it was in the, what was the first one we did? Amherst.
No,
No,
it was,
yeah, they should be tip certified and,
Yeah,
Greenfield was the first one I think we did.
okay.
yeah, Greenfield was the first one.
I have notes about the, yes, Weston, manager and the alternate manager, et cetera. They've got to participate in safe serving training. It's the first and second pages in the Amherst one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, you're correct.
No, that's okay. Yeah, absolutely have those requirements. How do we feel about, I saw language in one of them about giving us 30 days notice before somebody wants to do a BYOB, but I don't know how important that would be. If they have to come to us to get the license first before they do it, then we'll kind of know about it. Do you see a necessity to having notice? And this might be for the police to respond to as well. Do you see a reason to have a requirement to give us 30 days notice before they want to apply for a BYOB license? Or are you okay with the fact that we meet monthly, if not twice, sometimes 3 and 4 times a month?
Yeah, I don't think a 30-day notice would be necessary
Okay,
with
Yeah,
them going through the rest of the process.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. They fill out the application, they get on the agenda, Sergeant Connors is on, so he could speak to any concerns that he may have. So I don't think there should be.
okay,
I don't think a license should be transferred either. So,
right. I think that's in some of the language, Chip, so that's
Yeah.
important. that
Are
it's
we
not trans-
going
Yeah.
to, so when you say 30 days now, so I understand, but sometimes things just happen. Is there going to be something that you could go on like a protocol, like you want to go to some place and you know what, you want to bring your own, you go to the Legion, let's say you bring your own booze, they don't have it or whatever. It's a funeral, so it's a mercy meal. I mean, do they have to come for a permit? You're going to clarify what it means,
That's a
because it's
one-day license. That would be a one-day license. issue.
but sometimes you can't plan for it. If someone dies today, you got to bury them tomorrow. You're not meeting. Is there a protocol that they at least have to register online? There's an application they can get, or at least let somebody know. But because sometimes you don't have that 30 days. Sometimes one-day licenses are just, we have to figure out, because you know what? I've gone to so many places that, let's say people rent downstairs at, let's say, St. Anne's, the hall down there. It has a kitchen, has everything else, but people bring their own wine if they're going to have it. People bring, if they have gatherings. I mean, different cultures and stuff. Is that going to be considered under bring your own if it's a private party?
So first, let me just back up a little bit. The 30 days, when I brought that up, meant any establishment that wants to do BYOB would have to inform us 30 days before they want to do it. So that's what the 30 days is. It's
Okay.
not for the one-day funeral immediate issues. The issue about being in a church, I never ask what happens in churches. You know, that's their, I mean, I go to church, but I don't, if the church does something, far be it for me that I'm going to be knocking on their doors. But with due respect to that situation, I would probably ask Chip to give us some sort of guidance at some point during this conversation. Obviously not tonight. I mean,
Because you have like the DES club, you have halls that don't have like official bars or official liquor licenses, but yet people, you know, they do bring things in.
I mean, I guess that's the question based on what the mayor just said as an example.
yeah.
Are these does the board envision these licenses being event specific or an annual license, right? So if it's an annual license, then any entity that can apply for it, receive it, and then, you know, periodically they know people have events there that they bring in alcohol, BYOB, and then they've you know, they're bound by the ordinance.
So
Or
let
is
me
it
ask,
event specific?
right. I mean, I see it as a yearly permit. But that just brings up one of those issues we really haven't thought about or talked about, you know, will there be allowance for someone who does not have a common vic license to have BYOB? You know, we said that they had to have a common vic license because that's how we can push the enforcement.
Good point.
But these
But
other
at this-
kind of, these other clubs and stuff, they're not having stuff every single day. It's these onesie twosie things here and there. So I think it's hard to require them to have a BYOB.
So I guess I would want to hear from Chip, and like I said, maybe not now, but you know, what rights do private clubs have? Because they're a little bit different than the rest of the world.
Mhm.
When they do have private parties. I mean, I know there's more to it than we think. And I think Chip should probably advise us on that before we try to figure it out
Okay.
at our next meeting or something, if you can.
Yeah, next meeting's fine.
Yeah, obviously not tonight, but that does raise a concern.
There's got to be other communities who are doing this and have something. And
Right.
do we not, does, because they're non-profit, non-taxable, and it's religious, we don't stay far away because I don't need any more bad luck.
Right. I just
No,
haven't
but-
seen
but-
anything in any of these samples that even address that issue. And like I said, when you talk about private clubs, I know they have special protection for certain things, and I
Yeah.
can't help but wonder if maybe that would fall under that situation. And we can reach out to the ABCC as well, because I mean, Gloucester by far not
And
the only community.
I'll look into it because I
Okay.
think the intent probably is not to cause people problems. I mean, it's
Exactly.
not to,
Right.
you know, yeah.
Yep.
No, this is all about public safety and how we can keep the public safe, you know? So if someone's going to a private club and they're drinking, I mean, what is the answer to that question?
I mean, it's been happening my whole life. I've always gone to, you know, where it's, you know, if they didn't have like down at the halls and even before, like some of them had bartenders, but the, you know, St. John's Episcopal Church, my daughter's communion party. I mean, you're Italian, you're bringing wine. You cannot have food and not have wine in an Italian event. There's no way. You know, oh my God, she's poor. You have
But
to have
but
wine.
that could be the one-day license issue as well. And when going back to your question, John and I, we've texted each other, are you available in 2 days? Because there's a funeral and we have to do this, and we do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
as long as we can post it. I mean, you know, with Annisquam, they are,
Yeah.
during when COVID wasn't here, you know, we were meeting constantly with functions down there, mostly funerals, and who are we to say we don't
Right.
have time to meet, you know? And we meet, we do it, we make it happen. It's a quick meeting, but it's done. I think they pay $75 and they're regulated to have a nonprofit with beer and wine or an alcohol, and it works. So that could be what the private clubs fall under.
We'll have to check that out. All right, thank you.
Okay. John, what are we missing?
Definitions.
Yes.
I do like how they clarify what everything is on some of
So
them.
when you say they, let's give Chip some guidance.
So I think Greenfield, page 1,
Yes,
you know, it does go into a little bit more detail than Amherst has, and definitely more than some of the other ones. So I think we could look at page 1 of Greenfield,
exactly.
with the exception of brew, changed to bar.
Right. Right, and we're not allowing cordials. We in agreement just to do beer and wine, right? No
Yes,
cordials?
yeah, absolutely. I think it complicates it.
Yep,
If you add cordials.
absolutely.
Madam
Um,
Chair,
Yes,
can I go, and it doesn't have to be now, but going back to the 30 days in the application?
we're not doing 30 days. We decided that
Okay.
we didn't need that. It's not necessary. I think in a bigger city or where there's a community that may have a lot of BYOB, which I don't anticipate in Gloucester, I think the 30 days might be helpful if they know a larger restaurant is going to be doing BYOB all of a sudden. I mean, I think that would be helpful to the police department and the enforcement agencies. But here in Gloucester, I don't see that. We decided we didn't feel it was necessary.
Okay. The question that I had was, if you have a establishment that wants to serve alcohol, an ad needs to be put in the paper. I'm wondering if we will be doing that with the BYOBs. No. Okay,
No,
thank you.
I think that's an ABCC requirement. I don't see us as having,
Yeah.
people are bringing their own. It's not the establishment doing it. So,
Yep.
I mean, and it's, so I see this as an annual license that's renewed probably when common vics are renewed, to keep it easy. In other words, are you getting a common vic, and while you're here, are you getting a BYOB or not? If you
Mhm.
need one or not. I see it, keeping it that simple.
Okay, thank you.
So they expire on the 31st. They've got to go through the renewal process.
Right, non-transferable, same, stays with the business for a year, renewed every year.
So I think maybe the last thing we haven't touched on, only because it's 7:56,
Okay.
enforcement,
Enforcement, yep,
right? And what that looks like. Again, Greenfield, I thought did a pretty decent job. I think I like Amherst a little bit better. So Chip, Greenfield's on page 3, the bottom of page 3. And then Amherst is just page 5.
Okay.
so,
It talks
Want me to
about,
kind of blend those together?
well, so Greenfield, I mean, the Greenfield basically says 100 for the first offense, 200 for the second, and 300 for the third, and any subsequent, you lose your license. So, yeah, I get the fine part. I mean, that's pretty typical. I think Deputy Chief can tell you that too, even in a court setting, you know, you get fined the first time, second time. But in this, they're basically saying they're just going to remove their license, or what we would call a permit. I guess, John, we really need to decide this. Is this a permit or a license? I like the idea of calling it a permit.
Yeah.
As opposed to a license.
Yeah.
But I mean, I foresee having a little bit more bite to this than just a financial fine, and saying, you know, that they could lose their common vic license after so many violations.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's,
On the Amherst one, they do talk about the police chief for reasonable safety, you know, may immediately suspend the BYOB privileges. You know, at an establishment pending review at the next licensing board. That's like the 4th paragraph down. That the board also has discretion, they may suspend or revoke it. So I think a combination maybe of the two would work. I don't know if you looked at anything on Weston.
so we're licensed in Florida with authority, and in Gloucester, years ago, the Gloucester Police Department were, they became, what's the word?
Designated.
Agents. They
Agent-
became
agents.
Agents
Agents
of the board. meaning they have as much authority to enforce as well. And that is still in effect, that hasn't been changed. But I like the idea of putting in the ordinance or regulation, whatever we're gonna call it, that the police have the right to enter and inspect. You
Yep.
know, that way there's an expectation that they may be doing that.
Yep.
Which is part of the enforcement. So maybe something to that effect, that they can enter and inspect, and then I guess I would ask the deputy chief, I mean, are they really, is this gonna be an enforcement that the police will do as far as giving them a ticket? Or would it be a report back to the licensing board that there's been a violation? Because I know,
I think, you know, how we've done in the past, if we report it to you and
Yeah.
let it work through that process. So
okay,
probably a similar process would be the way to go, I would think.
okay. So John, we should discuss, you know, what, if it's a first offense, we'll give a fine, second offense, a fine. I mean, I'm not too keen on the third offense just being a fine. I think 1
Yeah.
and 2 for a fine, and then something a little bit with more consequence.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that too. 1 or 2, and then, and maybe make it more than $100, you know, to really kind of help them
Yeah.
understand the seriousness of the violation.
Well, I mean, let's think about it. It is pretty serious if they are violating it, because it means no one's paying attention, which it just takes one incident that can bring great harm to someone.
Yep.
Um,
So maybe it's a $500 fine, a $1,000 fine,
well,
Yeah.
I was thinking more like 250, 500, and then
and then suspending their,
suspending their common vic
or
license.
revoking, right?
And, or maybe suspending it, and then a 4th time could be revoking it.
Okay.
You know, something to that effect.
So so first is 250, second's 500, then it's common vic suspension for what? 30 days?
Yeah,
Because then
I
you've
mean,
got to get to the 4th, which is revocation, which means
Yeah.
they have to resume.
right. But then now Chip, this is a legal question. Because we're doing all this, do they have a right to appeal to anybody?
Well, I think if you're going to suspend their common vic license, I mean, how does that appeals process typically work? I
don't
mean,
know.
that would kick it over into the common vic process, but I'd have to take a look at that.
Right, because I don't know, I don't even know now what if we said no for a common vic, what is the appeal process? Where do they go? Superior Court?
I don't know, maybe.
Well,
I'll find out.
okay, yeah, we'll need to know that.
Mm.
I mean, I think we need to show that we're serious, but at the same time, I mean, we're hoping there's really no reason for this conversation. I mean, there's a reason we're saying it, but it won't be a end result. I think it's important that we mention that the city of Gloucester has the no drinking in public ordinance as well. I think that should be mentioned somewhere in there.
No vehicle.
Technically, the
Be what?
second we walk out the door and they're in a public place, if they're not corked correctly, well, that's something we should discuss too.
Yeah.
Are we going to allow them to bring unused alcohol with them? Because in the samples we've seen and in conversations with other people, some don't let you leave. In other words, what you bring, you drink or you leave behind. But then there's also that ability in Massachusetts that you can leave a restaurant as long as it's sealed properly.
Properly, yeah.
And we're now having restaurants offer drinks to take off premise. So I think it would be kind of contradictory to say that they can't bring it with them. It just has to be sealed appropriately, I think is the direction I'd like to go.
I would be fine with them sealing it properly. And
It
being
has
able
to be sealed properly. And that's a good time to remind them of the 14-3 city ordinance that no alcohol drinking in public or anything like that, because as soon as they leave the restaurant, they have to keep that sealed until they get home.
Isn't the restaurant required to seal that? And if you don't want them handling it, how would that process take place?
Right, so that's what I'm trying to walk through. That's a good question.
could they provide a vessel that they would secure, that the table would secure it? And ensure that's secured before they leave the premise?
I don't know if that would meet the standard. Just thinking of that law where you can leave with your half open bottle of wine.
Right,
I think the restaurant is required to seal it. So if you want to keep it out of the employee's hands, it might present a problem, but I'm not quite sure if I'm
That's
100%
probably why
clear on that.
nobody's addressed it on the other, in the other documents we looked at. It was never addressed.
I mean, restaurants are serving drinks right now to go.
That's
That was
why
part of the
Phil,
COVID regulations.
Right.
And I've seen some of them are just taped up with tape.
Right.
Um,
Is that a
So,
special, does that expire at some point?
It's
Oh,
it's a COVID
drinks to
law
go?
now. I just don't know if they're ever gonna, if they're gonna expire or if they're gonna make
Right.
it a permanent option for restaurants. Mike, maybe we can say something to the fact, it has to be sealed. So Chief, what would you consider not sealed? Like if it's in a, say someone brought a mason jar with a cover on it and they pour it in there and they leave the restaurant, is that,
See, I don't
Yep.
think that, I don't think that cuts it, in my opinion. Because then you get in your car and you put that in your drink holder and it's just too available for you.
can we put then maybe something that says all unused alcohol needs to be disposed of before leaving premise or something?
Or just no open bottles leave. If you have a bottle that you haven't opened yet, if you have a 6-pack of beer, you only drank 3 of them, like you leave with those 3 sealed beers, but whatever's open stays at the restaurant.
okay, that's actually a great idea. I like that. So, in other words, if you brought a bottle of wine and well, this contradicts that though. If you bring a bottle of wine and you only drink half of it, if you bought the wine, if you had bought the wine from a restaurant, you wouldn't be able to leave with it. You would be able to leave with it.
Right, if the
I know, but
restaurant
that's the
sealed it up.
difference.
If the
Yes,
restaurant sealed it.
Yeah,
And
That's the
and this-
difference, is you go
okay.
in, you buy it from the restaurant.
Yes,
Restaurant
okay.
has control of it. They have
Yep.
a license, they seal it. This case, you bring it in yourself, we're saying that's different.
Yeah.
Right,
You can't leave with it
Can't touch
because
it.
there's no way to properly seal it, so you're not gonna leave with it.
right. And the restaurant has made the profit off the wine that they sold them, where this they haven't. So I think that's a great suggestion. Any unsealed alcohol, any
Unused
unopened.
or any unused alcohol remains on premise. Anything sealed can be removed from premise.
Do we want to use the word opened? In other words, like a
I'll play
beer,
with,
you
I'll play
open
with
it?
that.
Yeah, something that's
I'll play with that language.
hasn't been opened.
Yeah.
You know, something to that effect.
Because somebody could interpret that as, well, there's a cork, I put the cork back in.
Or screw the cap back on for the wines that is just screw
Yeah.
caps now. Anything else?
You know, I. Chip, just let you know, that Amherst on page 5 does talk about temporary suspension of the BYOB, but it's only
Okay.
7 days.
Okay.
So, or the designee should
Okay.
be notified within 7 days.
So Chip, I think that 30-day suspension of the common vic right away is kind of, it's a lot. I mean, a lot of liquor licenses don't even get suspended for that long. Maybe we should say up to 30 days
All right,
where there's a discretion. Because I mean, even liquor licenses in their worst cases where they're serving minors, a lot of times they only lose it for 5 or 6 days at the ABC. If you read their findings on the ABCC, you would think that it would be stricter penalties, but it's really not, because I mean, it's the livelihood of the business being open, and being closed one day is a lot. So I don't want to be stuck with having to close somebody for 30 days. That's a long time. That's almost like
okay.
revoking. That could put a
Up to
business
30
out of business.
days at the
Discretion of the
discretion of
board.
the licensing board.
Yeah. John, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that, yes. Makes more sense. And I think as we read through this too, we might add, you know, some changes as we think it through.
And then Chip, just because the lawyer in me, I always want some sort of validity clause in the end. I'm just trying to see.
Amherst has it on page 5.
They do. Just because I think it tightens things up and brings it, you know, this is a city issue, not just licensing.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know if you can play with that kind of language.
Yep. I'll find
Um,
something.
And then we just need to talk about the cost of the permit. So I know Boston does 400. What else did we see?
Are they charging a cork fee in Boston?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
So who's this? Springfield only charges 25. Oh, no, that's a cork and fee. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Amherst only charges 20 for a
Is
fee,
it
for the
for a
permit.
cork and fee?
No,
Or
for
permit
permit.
fee? Where's Amherst?
I didn't see anything for Amherst.
No, where is it? Where is Amherst on the map?
Oh, it's Western Mass, north of Northampton.
Okay.
It's where I grew up, that whole area. UMass, Amherst,
Oh,
Camden.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Had lots of violations.
Yeah, I was a good girl. I didn't know where you up Amherst was. So what are we thinking for a fee? I like the idea of 200 if we're not allowing cork and fees.
Let's see, common fixture 75, correct? One-day license is 100. Do we charge?
75 or 100. Allison, how much are the one-day licenses?
You're muted.
Muted.
I believe it's 150. I'll check right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Haven't done one in so long.
I know we haven't. So I think, probably should be a little bit more than a one-day license. Because they have it all year. Really, that one-day license is just that one day.
I guess I'm more concerned about, the requirements that we're putting on these businesses that are already struggling. So we're telling them they have to get liability insurance, which is a
Yep.
cost. We're
Yep.
telling them that they
Sorry,
have,
Sorry.
to,
Nope.
they have to have tip certified, which is a cost. And if you do serve safe, that's a cost, So I'm a little hesitant, especially if we're not allowing them to obtain anything back through a corkage fee, other than maybe some extra business that they may get, knowing that they can go to that place and bring their own booze. I don't want to penalize, I don't want it to be a heavy,
Yeah, I mean, I think 400 is too much personally.
and to be honest with you, I don't see a lot of restaurants in Gloucester doing this.
Right.
We're pretty lenient when it comes to seasonal liquor licenses, which we don't have a quota, it's what's in the best interest of our city at the time, So there's a lot of places that have seasonal licenses and take that route. There's not many that would depend on a BYOB.
Right.
So I don't see this being a big option in Gloucester, but at the same, I'm just more concerned of the public safety of it, but don't want to make it unaffordable if someone wants to do it.
I totally agree there. So maybe 200 is the number.
Chip, what do you think of that?
Up to the board. I think, look, this is an annual license. It's not, it's a one-time fee, 100, 200. I mean,
Yeah,
but the board has probably a better sense of this than I do.
Madam Chair,
yes,
the one-day liquor license is $100.
yeah, I thought so. It was 100% fair. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think 200 is sufficient.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go higher than 200. I think 200 is sufficient, and their insurance will cost them some.
Yep.
Getting the signs, I don't even know where they get the signs from. Usually they get those from alcohol
Distributors.
delivery distributors. Yeah,
I'm sure there's something they could download,
yeah.
or
Okay.
maybe the insurance company maybe will provide it too.
Okay. Deputy Chief, can you see any issues that we may not have discussed that would be a concern to the police department?
I do not see any issues at this point.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot.
Yes. I think we covered everything, at least from,
Chip, how are you feeling about this?
Fine, I just need to get to work and start to put it together.
Okay.
I think the board's done a good job. I think you've hit most, if not everything. If you missed anything, obviously, when it's presented, you can,
Modify.
we can amend it then and there, and then vote on it. So.
One thing we didn't really talk about that we should just talk for the sake of putting on the record is as it appears right now, we're not putting a capacity to this. I know a lot of, John and I have read a lot of samples where it's for restaurants 30 and under, and I know I personally, and likely John probably will too, just because it was discussed a little bit, that there's really no need to put a capacity on this. I don't see a lot of big restaurants opening up just to be BYOB.
Could capacity be a determination by the board?
Yeah, as part of the permit process, we can ask about capacity and determine whether it's a proper fit or not, and how they intend to use the license. Like, in other words, if they're advertising it, which I think they have the right to do. But if they're opening a business specifically relying on BYOB, then that could be a concern. And I think that's something we need to avoid. This is for the celebrations, for the restaurants that don't have the liquor license, and they, not a everyday common event.
Do we know what Rockport did when they had, prior to allowing liquor licenses? They had a lot of BYOB. Do we know what their criteria was at all?
I don't remember them having that. I thought it was no alcohol.
No, I remember going to a restaurant there, and you could bring your own.
Yeah,
I worked at a couple and they were BYOB.
they were.
They just charged for glassware. You charge servings. So like if you needed a glass or a cork, or that's all they charge for.
I'm almost okay with them charging for glasses. But a lot of restaurants just want the business and might not want to charge it for a glass.
Right.
I don't know. But I don't see capacity being an issue. John, do you?
No, unless you get somebody that wants a, 120, 150 seat restaurant, they want all BYOB, it's really going to be difficult to manage.
So I think this is where we talk about the culture of the city a little bit. Not that I want to add time here, but so let's use the Causeway for an example, because we know they do BYOB and they seem to be doing it right. We've had no problems. But so that's a restaurant that's bigger than 30 capacity, probably seats, I don't know, 100 inside or 75 to 100. And I don't know of that business of everybody running to it to bring their own beer, bottle,
Right.
wine, and sit there, and where the majority of the people seating are drinking BYOB. I just see it as some families, like Safathia said, Italian, they're accustomed to drinking wine with their meals, and they have a lot of, it's an Italian run restaurant. So a lot of their patrons would probably bring in wine, which makes sense. But I don't ever recall walking in there and seeing 15 bottles of wine on 15 tables.
No, nor have I. It's probably 75 to 100 people that maybe, and I don't know what the occupancy is, but like I said, maybe, on the discretion of the board, rather.
Yeah, we can ask through the permitting process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go.
So,
I think sticking to the fact with having a common victual license, I think covers us a lot, because we know what the intention of the alcohol is.
yeah, I think
And it's to have with a meal.
Yeah, and tying them together is exactly what we should.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. Anything else on this topic before we discuss the other topic I wanted to talk about before we left? Are we good?
We're good.
Anybody think of anything we might have forgot? Chip might come up with a couple things as he's drafting. But okay, so that sounds good. So the only action potentially tonight, John, would be for us to discuss licensing board has authority to make regulations. We've seen it done in other communities. Do we want to make a regulation right now regarding BYOB while the regulations being developed in our community?
But what will that do to our current establishment in the city? If we
So,
suspend BYOB, can we suspend it to any new establishments that are not doing it? That way we don't impact Causeway.
well, all right, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I'm just thinking, while the regulation's being developed, no future establishments will be allowed BYOB until the regulation is completed or decided upon or whatever, rather than suspending it completely across the city, knowing that we have one establishment that has done it forever.
So my feelings on that are, it only takes one time for something to go wrong. And I don't know that I would stop suspending it just because it might interfere with someone's business right now during this time period of up to 6 weeks or whatever the time period Chip said. I mean, I'm just more worried about the public safety issue every day that goes by. I mean, I've been talking about this topic since August 26, 2019, which was right after I got on the board, because I just see it as a liability for our community, no matter who's doing it, and there's not always intentions or bad intentions when bad things happen. And I just see every day in Gloucester where this is not regulated, puts someone in our community or a visitor to our community at risk, knowing there's no regulation. So I don't feel comfortable allowing it for some and not for others that might want to do it. I know it's a difficult topic when you tell a restaurant right now, if we go that direction, that they can't do it. But I think if you look at the public safety issue and what's required and what we're not requiring right now, I mean, I don't like to be the bad guy, but my dad always told me I had to grow up and be responsible, and I see this as a responsible decision, not necessarily the best decision for the business right now. But I would hope that, it sounds to me like Chip is going to get to work on this, and on May 18th, we can probably approve something. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. We have the samples here. We see the language that we want. And
So if we approve it by the 18th of May, so we're looking at 30 days, the regulation, would Causeway be able to then go back to?
like July or August.
What's that?
It'll probably be July by the time it goes through all the steps on the city council.
Can we adopt the proposal?
Yeah, we could. Chip said we could as a regulation, and then recommend that they make it an ordinance and they can change it.
Because that way we're looking at a 30-day window versus a 3-month window for the Causeway.
Yeah, and that's the way Peabody did it too.
Okay. I like that idea.
I would be
Less than 30
supportive
days.
of that.
Actually.
I would be much more supportive of
Okay.
that. So,
Okay. No, I like that. That's a good idea. I forgot about that option. So,
you get a motion?
well, I'm just trying to think. So the interest is then to suspend BYOB tonight. And then on May 18th, we'll have a document pretty well established that we can, and even if we amend it, we can still adopt it and make a regulation that night on the 18th. So if right now, if we take any action to suspend, it's just until May 18th.
And how do we communicate that to establishments?
So Allison has an email blast that we would inform restaurants. Allison, do you have a common victular email blast?
I mean, I can do anybody's. I have all their contact information.
Yeah, we would have to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that, if you think about May 18th, the weather's going to be definitely nicer by then, so on and so on. So we're looking at 30 days. Because today's
Yeah.
Can you do something when it's not even a law? It's not law yet. Can you stop people?
Yeah. The
You can?
licensing authority has the authority, the licensing board has the authority to make regulations. How that's
Okay, but there's
enforced,
no
I don't know.
regulations yet. So how can you stop people if you haven't made it a regulation yet?
Well, we can make a regulation tonight that it's prohibited And then on May 18th, we can adopt the regulation that it's allowed under these provisions.
Okay,
And then the city council can take it and grab it and make changes to it if they want to. Or do something
Okay.
totally different if they want to.
okay. Just
So
want to
it
make
just-
sure that
yeah.
yeah,
No, that was one of the first questions I asked, you know, what authority do we have? And I noticed other licensing boards have regulations, they number them and they have a lot of them. To my knowledge, we don't have any that I've seen.
okay, just checking. I just want to make sure that I don't sit there and we get sued or
Yep.
whatever. You're not allowed to. We already had this planned. You know, like other things that are coming forward, you know, you've gotten these new and whatever concoctions that they want to put in front and not put in front and what you can do and not do. And I just don't want to see us getting in trouble. I just want to make sure that you have the authority. That's all. No problem with me.
I think, Sabathia, what's most important is the fact that we don't have any regulations out there right now, which makes it a free-for-all, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that
So,
scares me too, because I
Yeah.
mean, like, that's what they're all saying and that's what they're
Right.
doing. And like I said, I have no problem with you guys doing it. I think it's great. It's just that because this way we have more, not control, because nobody wants to control anything, but we know what's going on. And like you said, it's not fair for the people who, you know, that they have that you can bring your own alcohol. They have to pay a license at a store. I mean, at a restaurant and stuff. So, I mean, this way you want to come for the year, you get a license for a year. It's not that we're prohibiting anyone, you know, it's up to you to apply. And I needed to ask a question. Now, this new license that we're establishing, the funding from that, where does that go?
So it would be a permit and it would go
Yeah.
to the city of Gloucester.
Yeah, but I'd like to put something aside too, as far as educational programs. How do we help someone who's never, you know, open to, I'd like to, you know, when you do so, and you want to be proactive because you want to help the community to actually, so we have, you know, some kind of accountability. We should do once in a while that, you know, when they, some kind of courses updates that we should offer. I mean, it's not always going to be Zoom. We can have someone come in and do courses that, you know, the community can take for Safe Surf or something that to update, you know, people have to look at. And I mean, Deputy Chief, the IDs that are fake and all of those. I remember when I worked at Valentino's, we were up to, I mean, you had to go food service, you had to go into that, you had alcohol. I got mine licensed too, but it changes all the time. And I know that you ask them, but you know, sometimes just a refresher course or something that could help them. And when do you really say to someone, especially if you're going to have, I know I went to a couple of courses from the DA's office that they came here. You're having a party. You are responsible. It's your backyard or wherever you are. You're serving alcohol. You are responsible 100%. Those kind of educational probably would be free, but I'd like to see if we can do something. We'll talk to John Dunn, since this has not been in our budget, to save some money for some training.
So I would say that the money is going to the city of Gloucester.
And I can do what I want.
Whatever
Okay.
you want with it.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see some of it, but Chip,
Yeah.
I really remind me, I'd like to see some to just a little bit more out there. How do we, as someone who just opened an establishment, what do you need to do? Something, you know, something,
Okay.
the police want to go out there, something like that. I really do. I mean, this was like, it's actually a little bit more than your one day, and it's a little bit that I'd like to just let people know. Because we're going to have to educate them, and how you're going to educate them, whether it's Zoom or not, we don't have the time. Chip's on vacation tonight. He took a vacation day. So now I got to go comp him for a vacation day.
No.
So the fact is that, you know what, it'd be kind of nice. You can't always, because anytime the police or anyone does something, you're asking them to volunteer, and that's fine. But also when they have to do it during the day, that could be an overtime, that could be details, that could be whatever you want to call it. The fact is we don't have enough right now to do it. And so I really think that I want to do that. I think I'm going to look into that, to more educational things, just to let people know. And it doesn't have to be, you know, bad things. It could be educational and good things. That's my own opinion. I'll work on it, but thank you.
Great idea. Okay, so John, I'm going to make a motion, but to be honest with you, I'm going to use the language that Peabody used.
Okay.
Because I think it's fitting, and Chip can help me if it's not. So I'm going to make a motion that states no customer or invitee of a licensed or non-licensed establishment may bring in his or her own alcoholic beverages into the premises for consumption.
That's appropriate.
which is a total prohibition of the so-called BYOB conduct. We don't have to add that, but I thought that might help. It's only a motion, fine.
What's that?
I said, I think that pretty much says what we
Gotcha.
expect. In other words, whether you're licensed or not, right now, no
BYOB.
customer may bring in his or her own alcoholic beverage for
Second.
consumption. Second, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I think it's important to note that we don't necessarily like this idea of the pause, because that's exactly what this is, but I think it's necessary for public safety. And we're just going to move forward as fast and quickly as we can to get it regulated.
It's a short 30-day window. So
Roll call vote, Allison?
Mr. Lamarand,
yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes. So, Chip, what do you advise us? I mean, obviously, we just made a regulation for the first time that I know of for the licensing board. Is this something we should keep in a book somewhere?
Well, with any regulations, I think they need to be made public, perhaps a link on the website to a printed regulations. You
Okay.
can have it attached in a PDF.
Okay,
This is contained in the minutes now.
Yep.
I would imagine that the board as procedure will accept the minutes next time.
yep,
Is that how you typically do it?
Yep. mhm,
So at the next meeting, before the minutes haven't been accepted yet. So I would suggest that at the next meeting, you're going to put regulations in place.
mhm.
So I don't know if you want to put how you want to communicate this to the local establishments, maybe through an email blast or something like that. And then once the new regs have been approved, then I would suggest putting some kind of a link to those regulations on the
Website.
licensing board's webpage.
Okay.
Mm.
So we will, Allison, you're on vacation too, correct?
Yes, I'll be back
Okay.
Monday.
Okay. So today is Tuesday, so there's not really a way to notify anybody until Monday.
If you write it up, I can send it.
So do you have a list of common vic?
Yeah,
Already have a list? You do?
yes. I have a
Okay.
spreadsheet with everybody's contact info, so.
Okay, awesome. All right, I will do that hopefully tomorrow. I have a day
Okay.
off tomorrow, so I can
I'll-
get that to
I'll
you tomorrow. So
Check
we'll
my
do
computer
a
and send it out.
email blast tomorrow to common victual holders to let them know. Chip, do you see us needing to do anything else?
No, not at this time, but if I do, I will let you know.
Okay. Deputy Chief, anything you want to add?
Not at this time, no.
So by our vote, as of now, BYOB is not allowed, and on May 18th, when we meet again, we will develop another regulation based on.
Do
our
me a
conversation.
favor, Melissa, when you send
Yeah.
out that email blast or whatever you do, remind them this has nothing to do with the outdoor licenses, please, because people will call me and saying, what do you mean? I can't have my stuff outside? I can't bring my restaurant and no, it has nothing to do with that. You know what? Make sure you say, this is something totally different. If you got your permit to have outside dining, that's totally different, something, because I guarantee you will get bombarded with calls saying, what?
So this is for establishments that basically they don't serve alcohol now.
Well, you know what? Look,
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
it'll go to the newspaper.
Yeah,
It's gonna
yeah.
go, don't forget, everything goes to whatever, and they interpret anything the way they want to interpret. And the fact is that, you know what? Why aren't we outside? Why aren't we this? We're already getting that. And we're already getting, well, where's the liquor license? Where's my permit? Where's my this? And you know what? Right now, people don't read facts. They don't want facts. They like the Inquirer.
We will do our best to explain it, and we're gonna give Allison's private number for those who.
Okay, that's, I'm fine.
Fantastic.
Because I know her already.
They already know it.
I'm just gonna have her sign the letter.
Yeah, so,
Thanks
all
to
right, have a
COVID
good
and
night,
working from
everyone.
home. Good
Good
night.
night.
Good
All
night.
right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, thanks to COVID and everybody working from home, they already have my cell phone number.
Right,
Yeah.
we know that. Okay, awesome. Thank you, gentlemen, specifically Deputy Chief and Chip for your great input tonight. I know it wasn't a really big conversation, but I think this is probably one of the better conversations this board has had going forward as far as addressing a public safety issue.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Chip, enjoy your vacation. Or you already left.
You've gone.
All right, do we have anything else? It says new business, so I don't see any new business. Allison, can you give us some sort of update as far as how many licenses are outstanding, if any, for renewals?
Just two, I believe.
Okay, year rounds or annuals?
Annuals. I
Okay.
mean, I'm sorry, year rounds. There's two that are on the top of my head is the Chinese restaurant on the Rotary
Okay,
did
yeah,
not renew, and the Cape Ann Brewery did not renew.
Which we know why.
Exactly. And I
wait, so the
believe-
brewery was a seasonal and the one at the Rotary is a seasonal as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, they're both seasonals, okay. Okay,
Okay.
so
Great.
May 18th, it looks like it would just be dedicated to this conversation unless something else comes up, so,
I think Tono's gonna wanna, Tono's trying to push they got approved by the ZBA to expand their outdoor seating permanently.
okay,
So they're
Permanently?
trying, yes, into the parking lot. So they're trying to get that pushed through quickly so that they can start building to have it this summer. So I just reminded them this afternoon that they still have to come before the board for their permanent extension of premise with the,
Permanent, right? permanent
yes.
extension.
okay.
Did I not say permanent? I'm sorry.
No,
No,
Did
no,
I say
no.
temporary?
No, no.
Permanent, yes.
okay.
So that
Interesting.
might be coming up.
Okay. That's
So
easy.
May 18th it is. Excellent. Thank you both very much. Just
Allison,
make-
have a great vacation.
Thank
Thank you for coming.
Thank
on.
you. Oh, anytime.
Thank you.
Do you have to motion to move to adjourn?
You can do that right now,
Yes.
John.
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Mr. Lammerin,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes. Good night. Thank you all. Good work.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.